Okay, sweethearts, are we ready?
Yes, we are.
Okay, good. Let's start out. So we're going to first start, as you know, Nina's going to, you tell them, Nina, what you're going to do. Tell them what the meaning is. That's the point.
I will do my best. Oh, I think I stopped sharing by mistake. Sorry about that. Yes. So what we are going to do together is offer mandala, and the mandala in the Buddhist terms means the entire universe. So while we are chanting this mandala offering, we do our best to imagine the most vast, amazing offerings we only can. So not just one.
So you're offering as a request, but the point is you're offering as a request for the teachings. That's the point.
Yes. So we're offering as a request to the teachings, to our teacher, and also all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas from whom the teachings come. And then, very important, when we chant the last part, Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami, we do visualize the teacher and all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas receiving our vast offerings and being incredibly pleased, happy.
To give context for that, I always say that, the lamas don't usually say it in the teachings, but I remember hearing Lama Zopa Rinpoche say, according to the tantric point of view, I just lost you all for a second. I've got to see what's happening. I can't get back in again. I can hear you all, but I keep losing the screen.
We hear you too, Venerable.
No, I know, but I can't see you. I never know how this happens, and I always lose the picture. I don't know how to get it back. Huh. Hide Zoom, no, not that. Hide others, no. It says launch meeting. I don't need to. I'll click allow, but you don't come up. This happens regularly to me, and I can't work out the solution. Hang on. I can see you. I can hear you all, but you're not on my screen. Now I click my link again, and then I go allow. You should be appearing. I'm going to have to cancel it and come back.
Okay.
Here we go. See if it comes now. Are you there? Are you all there?
We are here, Venerable.
Okay, yes, we are here.
Okay, now I can see you. Hang on a minute. Now I'll go do something else. Wait. Sorry. No, you've disappeared again. Why does that do that? This is very strange. I don't know why you disappear on me. Can you hear me again still?
Yes, we still hear
I know, but I click something else and then the screen goes away.
There's prayers up on the screen right now for everybody. I don't know if that affects you, but
nothing to do with it. No, it's like your whole screen. It's like I've gone onto another screen in my computer and I can hear you, but I can't see you all. I don't know what happens. Let's just quit this other
video
thing.
on. So in your settings.
Fine. For now, it's fine. I can see you again now. We'll leave it. I've got to do something else in a minute. So sorry, interrupting. So the only reason I say that, Nina, is because I heard Rinpoche say it, but if you notice, the lamas don't say that when you normally do it in the front of the teachings because it's from Tantra. But I mentioned because it's so sweet that Rinpoche said that in Tantra, the very meaning of the word to offer, or chur in Tibetan, or puja in Sanskrit, the actual meaning, according to Tantra, is that you imagine the recipients of the offering experiencing the joy of receiving it. I just think that's so beautiful to know. It's my addition, but it's coming from Rinpoche. It's lovely. So, okay. Good, let's go.
Great. So I invite everybody to chant with me. If you feel more comfortable just visualizing, please do that. It's important, I think, the visualization itself of offering the entire universe to request the teachings. Saji Pöki Jukshin Metog Tramri rablinji nidegen padi sangye jindu mikte ulwa idrokunamdak Jin la Parshok. Perfect, pure, holy gurus from the billowing clouds of wisdom and compassion in the sky of the Dharmakaya, please let fall a rain of profound and extensive Dharma upon the receptacle of those to be subdued exactly as they need. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniyatayami.
Okay, so now next little prayer is setting ourselves in the right direction for this teaching, this discussion about purification, etc. We're expressing the first two lines, expressing our reliance on the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And the second two lines, our motivation for this, our motivation, our long-term goal, our purpose for listening to these teachings is so that we can get the tools from it, to take the advice from it, that we can apply to our own minds, that we can develop our amazing potential, so we can become a Buddha eventually, so we can be of benefit to others. That's the long-term purpose of our activity together. Sangye chadang soke chognam la jangchum paru dagni kyap suchi dagi chernyen gipa sonam ki drola penche sangye drupa shog Sangye chadang soke chognam la jangchum paru dagni kyap suchi dagi chernyen gipa sonam ki drola penche sangye drupa shog. So until we're enlightened, we're going to rely upon the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And by the virtuous karmic seeds that we plant in our mind from listening to these teachings, may we become a Buddha, no matter how long it takes, so we can be of benefit to others. Okay. That's it. So we can take the picture down now. Prayers. Yeah. And let me see if I can do this other thing I want to do without making you all go away. Yes, now we're okay. But just give me 30 seconds. Okay, let's go. So here we are together, again in Zurich, all over the world, wherever we are, to discuss purification. So it's the practice of it, something that we should, Lama Rinpoche says that we're insane not to do a particular practice of purification every day. So let's look at the logic of this, you know. And as always, let's look at it psychologically, because we're so used to thinking, as I always say, that religion is something different. Somehow it's punitive and you've got to purify because you're naughty and you'll get punished and you've got to get forgiven. This view of punishment and reward is very deep in our bones. So it's continually incredibly important to think logically through and how this approach in Buddhism of karma is not punishment and reward, because there's no punisher, there's no rewarder. It's not logical. We've got to think that through, you know. It takes us time because it's very deep in our bones that we think in this way, in a very punitive way. As soon as we get kind of like do this and don't do this, we become very fundamentalist, you know. And it's mistaken. It's the wrong view altogether. In exactly the same way, which I use this analogy all the time, is exactly the same way. If you go to your doctor and she tells you, you know, she shows you these pictures of these terrible lungs of people who've had cancer of lungs, lung cancer, and to warn you that you have to stop smoking, Robina, because you're going to get this. If you don't get this, you know, so you don't go, oh my God, you're going to punish me with lung cancer. You don't say that to have a mental breakdown. You're delighted that she's pointed out to you that certain actions that you do are going to ripen as your future suffering. And of course you don't want suffering. So you're delighted. You're like you won the lottery. You're so grateful to her. But as soon as we hear the business of karma and how we create our own suffering and our own happiness, then we think differently. We think of it as like, you know, someone's going to punish me. And we can't, as I always say, don't blame your Jewish mummy, your Catholic mummy for this. This actual dualistic view of believing in believing in punishment and reward is coming from our own mind. It's actually a misconception that comes from this dualistic view of ego grasping, of ignorance, that posits an intrinsic me, an intrinsic other. It's a consequence of that view that we think like this. And we have to stop thinking this way. It's quite difficult, but we have to. So, you know, the understanding of purification is completely obviously dependent upon the understanding of karma, this natural law that runs the universe. Purification has no meaning if we don't understand karma. And that means if we don't understand this fundamental law that, as far as Buddha is concerned, is the law that runs the universe. No one runs this law. It's not as if God created. This is the typical view we have, as I always talk about. The typical view we have of religion is that somebody up there who is the creator of the universe, therefore has the power, therefore creates the laws, and therefore says, do this and don't do that. And when you don't do it, you get punished. And when you do it, you get rewarded. This is the view, the philosophical view that's deep in our bones. And it's also with our own lives, even if you're a materialist. Your mummy says, don't do that. And we're little, and we'll say, being smarty pants, we'll say, why not? We know her answer because I say so. This is really powerful. Why don't you do this? If the policeman's a really heavy duty policeman and he tells you not to do something, you'll say, why not? He says, because I say so. You know, that's a heavy view. There's no such thing in Buddhism. Well, there is actually. There is. I mean, for example, when Buddha came, you know, started developing communities of monks and nuns, you start to live together. You create laws. Even if two people live together, you start having rules that you agree upon. Well, you know, we don't pee on the ground, we pee in the toilet. You know, we don't, you know, we agree on certain things. That's what really, that's reasonable. It's an agreement. Buddha has these too. But from the point of view of the big picture of the universe and how it runs, as far as Buddha is concerned, is natural law. As far as Jesus Christ is concerned, it's God's law. And this is the major, major difference. And it's important to think this way. It's not just being intellectually clever. And that's the view that is the view of ego. We all run around our life. Why do you think we have guilt? Guilt is I'm a bad person because someone said I shouldn't do something and I did do it and I'll get found out and I'll get caught. That's how we think. That's how we suffer so badly, you know. So this just takes us time. Unless we analyze it and think it through like this, we'll just assume it's punish and reward. It sounds the same. Complete mistake. So this is the view. So the Buddha's view is that there are trillions and trillions and trillions of sentient beings, of mind possessors. Sem Chen in Tibetan, literally mind haver. Mind possessor. There are trillions. That's a much better word, I think, than the English sentient being. Mind possessor is so direct, you know. And there are trillions of us. These consciousnesses, these mind streams, these mental continuums, these rivers of mental moments, non-physical, not created by anybody else, not the handiwork of a creator, not the handiwork of mummy and daddy, not physical, beginningless and endless. Essentially. Of course, that's hilarious. That's not how we think at all in our world. So this is Buddha's view. And where's he got it from? Not from on high, not from revelation. He's observed it. He's a scientist. He's observed it. I say that and people think it's a joke. It's deadly and precisely serious. It's correct, it's accurate, and it's serious. Not like a joke. So if we're taking this view as our working hypothesis, if we're Buddhists, because we have to in the beginning because we can't see the truth of this yet, it's too subtle for us. It's our working hypothesis. So then given that, then the law, the natural law that within which these minds run, put it like that, the natural law within which growing things exist in the world, which is called botany. So the natural law within which things exist, which minds exist, that determines what minds experience. Mind is experience. Consciousness is experience. Consciousness is experience. And it's personal, it's subjective, it's personal, it's mine. So what determines what goes on in that mind, our mind, every millisecond, what determines what goes on in our mind every millisecond, and therefore what determines what the servants of our mind do and say, which of course is the body and the speech, what determines what goes on in our mind every millisecond, and therefore what determines what our body and speech do, because they're the servants of the mind, is what we've put in the mind already. and what we do in the mind with the mind itself. So what determines what grows in your garden is what you've put there. That's why the Buddha always uses an analogy. It's such a simple and marvelous analogy. But that's not how we think in our world. We think that what goes on in my life is based upon what other people do. So the outside world, as far as we are concerned, is the main cause of what goes on in my mind and what goes on in my life. Buddha says, no, the outside world definitely plays a role, but they're secondary. It's a very simple point for the Buddha. It's technical. The main cause of what goes, the main source of what goes on in my mind is what I put there before. So in other words, the seeds and fruits analogy is a really good one. So, this law is called the law of karma. Now, karma, I think I've heard, I don't know, maybe the different translations is something like action. So basically every millisecond, the Buddha is saying what our mind does. And it's not a millisecond that it's not doing anything. Every millisecond of what our mind does is the creating of karma, the doing of an action. First and foremost, mental action. Then on the basis of this, the body and speech carry out the wishes of the mind. So this process is called creating karma, doing actions. And every millisecond, what we think and do and say leaves a seed in the mind. And seeds, by definition, will eventually ripen as fruits. So the next level of detail here, very simple, is that these fruits are simply called happiness, suffering, or neither happiness nor suffering. So we forget that. That's boring. Forget that. It exists as a state of being, but we're not worried about that one. But every millisecond, what we think and do and say ripens as our experiences, either happy experiences or suffering. That's it. Or another way of putting it, every millisecond of what we think and do and say now sows seeds in our mind that will ripen as our future experiences, our future happiness and suffering. So this entire law of karma then for the Buddha is framed in terms of happiness and suffering. And if you analyze this, it's very logical, because every second of our life, what do you think drives us? What drives every action we do and say and think is what we want: happiness and the avoidance of suffering. It's pretty primordial, it's pretty fundamental. Buddha would even say every being is driven by this. And this is the basis of the compassion wing. This is the basis of wanting others not to suffer, which is compassion, which is the basis of wanting others to be happy, which is love. We've got to first understand it for ourselves. It's very kind of primordial, very fundamental, very natural. So, of course, in our world, there are 47 varieties, 47 different definitions of the word happiness and the word suffering. And it's a really important discussion. People have it in conferences all the time about this. And therefore, what are the causes of it? What is it? What is happiness? And what are its causes? I mean, Tony Steele, one of our directors of one of our centres in Sydney, Vajrasattva Institute, he's got his own events business, and he started about 10 years ago, more now, 13 years ago, 2 conferences in Sydney and in Melbourne, in Australia, and and he runs his centre on the basis of these, and one of them is called happiness and its causes. One is called the mind and its potential, and then there's these big conferences where I have 40 speakers over 2 or 3 days with workshops. And Dalai Lama regularly, he invites His Holiness, so 3,000-4,000 people come to these. And this is just an amazing topic for people. There are so many amazing thinkers in psychology these days. But when you listen to it, 40 variations, 40 interpretations of what happiness is and what causes it and how to get it. Well, that's exactly what Buddha is. He's been talking about this for 2,500 years. He even frames it like this, and how to stop suffering and get rid of suffering, which implies get happiness. Freedom from suffering is happiness. It's an odd way to put it. Excuse me. So where does Buddha get this information from? Again, from his own experience, it's his own observation. He's just presenting his findings to us. And he says, if you want to get happy and stop suffering, you can follow these techniques, and you've got to prove it along the way as you go. You're the one who has to police it. You're the one who has to prove it to be true by your own experience. So given that every millisecond of what we think and do and say produces either happiness or suffering, and given that we know even at the grossest level, because there's 3 kinds of suffering, in the first noble truth there is suffering, there are 3 levels of suffering. And the first is the suffering of suffering, which is what we mean by suffering. It's when the bad things happen. Very simply, it's when the bad things happen. So we know we don't want that. Every being in the universe knows that. Monkeys and dogs and ants and humans. We know we don't like getting kicked, bad-mouthed, punched in the nose, food stolen, hurt, sick. We know we don't want that. This is the first kind of suffering. It's pretty clear. And the whole first level of Buddhist teachings in junior school, and the entry level in the level of the Lam Rim, the lower scope, which is the teachings about karma, these are the solutions to stopping that kind of suffering. So given that everything we think and do and say produces future suffering, what are the causes of it? What are the causes? So for example, the bigger picture, of course, for the Buddha is other realms of existence which are intensely suffering. But even forget those. What are the causes? Because of course, Buddha says our mind will continue, we'll take another rebirth. And even if we do take another good human rebirth, like a human rebirth, we can see in a human rebirth there's lots of suffering. There's kind of a suffering called experiences similar to the cause, which is the stuff that happens to us at the hands of others, how we're seen and treated by others. Look at the world. And then there's even what they call environmental suffering, the way the very physical world impacts upon us. So that's, so for example, we know, so for example, the environment can be polluted, or we know that you might get sick, or you might die, or might get hurt. So what are the causes? That's suffering we know we don't want. Let's say you get stolen from. Let's say people don't believe your words. Let's say the environment where you live is smelly and stinky. So for these types of things, with the materialist view, the philosophical materialist view, which says that our mother and father made us, which says we track ourselves back to mummy, daddy, grandma, grandpa, grandma, great-grandma, back to the monkeys. That's the evolution of the physical world, isn't it? Then we're still trying to work out. We don't know why suddenly a nice mother, let's say, or a kind, a mother gives birth to a certain kind of child with certain tendencies, and we assume it's the mother's fault. It's the genes in the mother. So, even if you're a good parent and you give birth to some psychopathic boy, we're convinced it has to come from mummy, daddy. We look in the brains of the child. We try to track it back. How come this boy did this? Or how come a person doesn't believe your words when you're telling the truth? We haven't found answers to all of this. It's quite complicated. It's quite complicated. But the Buddha's got his view. And his view is that everything comes down to the mind, every living being. That the main causes of all happiness and the main causes of all suffering reside in the mind of the being who experiences it. It's very simple. It's not a complicated concept at all. It's really clear and easy to present. And even as we progress, the logic is all there in the text. It's all there for us. It's all there for us just to check first intellectually and then to experience the truth of it. It's not hit and miss. It's not a creator. And this is the difference between the Christian teachings, for example, and the Buddhist teachings. Jesus said, God is the boss. A being called God is the boss. A being called God has always existed, has no cause. And for whatever reason, I never understand it. I mean, people can explain it to me, but I'd love to know. But why God decided to create the universe and create us, I don't know. But never mind, he did. There must be reasons. So then if God's the boss, God has a plan. And that's why people who have faith in God, and I think it's amazing, good on them. I'm not criticizing. It's not Buddha's view at all. That's all. But, if God is the boss, then God has got a plan. And you don't need to know God's plan because you have faith in God, and that's good enough. He keeps his plan in his pocket. That's perfectly fine. But that's not the Buddha's view. There's nothing secret because we all create it. It's almost like a cosmic joke. We think everybody else creates our suffering. We think everybody else is the cause of our happiness. We're looking everywhere else around the world for happiness and suffering. But Buddha says it's right here. We've created it. It's not a complicated concept. We've got to think it through. It's quite shocking, Everything comes from the mind. Past actions, an action that's called a negative action is an action that the grossest level is an action that harms another, let's say lying to somebody. So the action is lying. There's an object there called a person. The action on my side is a lie. The motivation is my own self-centeredness. That leaves a seed in my mind that will ripen 32 lives later or next life, whatever. It won't mostly ripen in this life. It's long term. And it can ripen in 4 different ways. Either a type of rebirth, suffering one, if it's a complete action, a tendency to keep doing it in this life. Let's say you get a human life. So look at our lives now. In this life, there are 3 ways that our karma ripens in this life. One is a tendency to keep doing it. Look into your mind. We've all got tendencies, haven't we? Good ones and bad ones. Some of us might have a tendency to lie. That's because you've lied in the past. Second, lying will ripen as an experience at the hands of others. You'll get lied to, or you won't be believed. Look at your life. This is not uncommon. 3, it'll have an environmental result. This sounds pretty cosmic, but it's all understandable if we understand the Vajrayana model of the universe. It's very interesting. It's all there. It's explained. So there's 3 ways that any of our actions will ripen in this life, let's say in a life. There's a cause also for the life, But let's say there's 3 ways that our past actions will ripen in the present, either as happy experiences and suffering. Now look in your life and track it back to the beginning. You divide very easily, you'll divide all your experiences as in terms of happy or suffering. There are levels of these, spectrum of these, isn't it? It's not complicated. And the third one you can divide in terms of the first way our karma ripens in this life is as a tendency in our mind to keep doing it. In other words, whatever we think and do and say is just a bunch of habits. It's very simple, not complicated. Not habit got from mummy or daddy. No. Mummy or daddy might share them, no problem. But mummy and daddy have got those habits because they did them before and brought them with us. And we've got that habit because we did it before and we brought it with us, and we conveniently get born together, you know, as good liars or good musicians or good angry people, whatever. So that my mother's ability to play music, for example, she got that from playing music. People saw that she saw her little Bobsy, me, and she saw a tendency to be good at music. So naturally we assume in the Western world that mummy gives Robina music genes. No, she doesn't. She might be giving me genes, yes, but not the tendency to play music. That's mental. That comes from my tendency at being good at that kind of thing in the past. And conveniently, I was born to a mummy who saw that and was able to nourish my tendency. That's the way it works. So everything that goes on, my own tendencies, what are they? My past habits. The experiences I have at the hands of others, what are they? From my own past habits. They come as an experience that happens to me. And even the environment. So every action we can do, every action we can think that's positive or negative. For example, a conscious intentional action of non-killing. Conscious intentional action. When there's a mouse there, I must not kill it. You don't kill it and you save it and you release it. That's a complete action of not killing, speaking simply. That leaves a strong seed in my mind that will ripen, 1, as a type of a human rebirth, a good rebirth. And these seeds multiply. 2, I'll wake up in a human life with a tendency to not kill. 3, I'll wake up in that life with not getting killed or not dying young. And 4, I'll be nourished by the environment. It'll be delicious and tasty, and the water will be tasty, the food will be tasty, and the air will be not polluted, and I'll be healthy and fat. They are the 4 results of non-killing. Every action we ever do has any or all of these 4 results. So given that we don't want the suffering ones, it's the very first level of practice, entry-level junior school, grade 1, is we start to abide by the laws of karma. And the Buddha's basically saying, like your doctor says, Robina, you don't want future cancer? Well, honey, stop causing it. What's the cause, doctor? Smoking. Okay, thank you, bye. You go ahead and do it. You want future suffering, Robina? Do you want to be killed, lied to, harmed, bad-mouthed, kicked, raped, terrorized? No, thank you. Well, then don't cause it. So he gives us a list of 10 don'ts. His first level. Don't kill. Don't badmouth, don't harm, don't steal, don't take the ungiven, don't jump on the wrong partner. 3 of the body. 4 of the speech. Don't lie. Don't abuse people. Don't talk bad things behind backs. And don't rabbit on about nothing. 7 little baby actions of body and speech. And the last 3 are the beginnings of working on our mind, and we'll go into that. But the heaviest level of actions is ones that harm others. So the heaviest level of actions to refrain from doing are ones that harm others. The logic is not complicated. It's just that it's shocking because it's not how we think. And it's not punishment and it's not reward. It's a natural law for the Buddha. So the very first level of practice, as Lama Zopa says, entry level, immediate, right this second. Start this second. Again, the analogy of the doctor. If you don't want cancer, stop now. Right this second, stop smoking. This second, don't wait. This second, stop smoking. At least you stop creating more causes for future cancer. So you don't want to be future suffering? Stop killing, stop stealing, stop lying. Basically, now I asked Jesus, why should I do that? Because Jesus says the same. And his reason is very, very different. This is what we have to think through. Because God said, because God's the boss. I remember I asked my Jesuit priest friend, I always quote this. I said, what by definition is a sin? By definition, he said, a sin is doing what God said not to do. So that's logical. So the logical reason behind not killing for a Christian is because God said. That's the main factor. He said there is natural law there, but the main one is because God said. This is so powerful, and I'm not criticizing, but it's not Buddha's view. In exactly the same way, when you say to your doctor, why shouldn't I smoke, doctor? Because I say so. We would laugh at that. Same here. Buddha's not a boss. He's not the creator. He's an advisor like a doctor. This is the point. So you've got to, in other words, from the very first beginning of first level of practice, we've got to know I do not want suffering. It is for our own sake. We miss this in the West. We think, oh, that sounds selfish. No, it's intelligent. You've got to know you don't want a future suffering. Of course, this takes time because it means you've got to have some semblance of confidence in the law of karma. It's not easy for us. Confidence, confide, with faith, with trust, by thinking it through. That'll energize us then to not want to kill, steal, lie, take something else, blah, blah. Not out of guilt and shame, hoping no one sees me and I won't get caught. That is beyond infantile. That's like thinking when you go home and your doctor said not to smoke and you think, oh, my doctor's not here, she won't see me, and out come the Marlboros. I won't get cancer, doctor doesn't see me. This is like hilarious. That's how we think of morality. It's ridiculous, it's infantile. It's absurd. The logic behind why you would not want to kill, steal, lie, is because you do not want suffering in the future. That's the basis of karma, And there's a natural law that runs the universe, Buddha says. And when we've got it very strongly for ourselves, we will then have, this is the basis of our compassion for others. Oh my God, nobody realizes they're creating their own suffering, That's the nightmare of the world. But then it's not enough just to merely stop killing. Once we become committed to being a Buddhist, like we did we eventually take refuge, like we did a couple of weeks ago, or whatever it was. Then you commit to being a Buddhist, and then you take the vows, the lay person's vows, the 5 lay person's vows, or the monk and nun vows that are the same level, the vows of individual liberation. And so this is an extra level of powerful practice, that not killing within the framework of a vow not to kill is 1 billion times more potent than merely not killing. We'll go into all this, And then the next level of practice is now to take care of the seeds we've already planted in countless past lives that are sitting there latent in our mind, waiting for the conditions to ripen as my suffering. So that's like you go to your doctor, your first response is stop smoking now, but that's not enough. You got to clean up your lungs. You got to clean up what you eat and do the other actions to purify at a deeper level. So you purify the damage you've already done before it ripens as cancer. So that's why purification, as Rinpoche says, we're insane not to do it every day. And we think of it this way, you delight in doing it. You want to do it. It's like you take your vitamins every day. You're glad to do it because you know you will be the beneficiary, not out of guilt, which is so childish. So the first level of practice, stop doing negative things this second, because that'll leave seeds in your mind that'll ripen as your future suffering. And then you've got to take care of putting atomic bombs under the seeds you've already planted in the past, in countless past lives, that haven't yet ripened as suffering. And when you've got this level of practice, this is just the first level. This is the entry level. This is like the first scope. This is the method to stop the first kind of suffering. The suffering of suffering. This is the method, living in vows, living a good life, being ethical in the context of vows and purifying every day, doing a bit of practice, thinking about the Buddha. You can die with a happy mind. You can tick all the boxes. You have put everything in place. You can be content that you've lived a brilliant life to the best of your ability, confidently. You've sown all the right seeds and you're pulling out all the wrong seeds. You can die with a happy mind and guarantee that at the least you'll get another decent human rebirth with no tendency to kill, steal, lie. This is why having vows is so powerful. And those things won't happen to you. So you'll have enough in the bank and enough leisure and enough health, because you've created the cause of it, so you can carry on practicing your spiritual path. It's just plain intelligence. It's like saving money. It's like, having a pension plan and having a savings account. I mean, it sounds crass, but it's a practical and logical analogy. Because we create the cause of who we become. We create the cause. We are the creator of who we are now. As His Holiness says, the law of karma is like self-creation. It's just such a blissful view. I think it's an amazing view. I love it. I mean, to think that someone else creates me, I don't know, that's a weird idea to me. Even when I was a Catholic, as a little girl, I was completely in love with God, completely in love with Our Lady and all the saints. Mass every morning on my bicycle, When I went to boarding school, Mass every morning, knew all the Mass in Latin, wanted to be like Saint Therese of Lisieux, kneeling down at night saying my prayers, put a hairbrush on my brow because I want to suffer for God. I was in love with God, but I never thought of God as my creator. So I think I must have been a Buddhist in the past. It seems like I had guru devotions as a little girl, you know. It's very funny. So I didn't have guilt either. I never had much guilt. I thought guilt was a stupid thing. How are we going? Gosh, only 20 minutes left. Any questions so far? We haven't even begun to get into purification yet, but we'll get there slowly. Any questions so far?
If you have any questions, you can unmute yourself or raise your hand.
Good, Kimberly, you go, baby. Kimberly, yeah.
Oh, there we go. This is related to karma and purification.
Good.
So I was doing some beginning Mahamudra practice after reading Lama Yeshe's awesome book.
Wonderful.
Just starting. And I ran into kind of a experience of my ego, and I was really shocked at how much hatred I really had in her.
Seeing it, wonderful, girl. Well done.
Yeah, it was monolithic, like a Empire State Building. It was I'm still a little bit upset, actually.
It's wonderful. You're seeing it. You're seeing it, Kimberly. This is the point.
Yeah. So it's pretty bad, and so I did the practice. I followed one of your videos that brought me through a deity practice. So I got my laser beams.
Yes.
And it resulted in a profound experience of humility, which apparently I've never had. So that was good.
Wonderful, darling. This is so good, Kimberly, because the point is this. You know, even in the classical Indian texts where they describe the process of cultivating single-pointed concentration, which is what Lama Yeshe is talking about, shamatha, they say in the texts, and it's described in terms of 9 stages of cultivation. They say one of the signs of success at the first of the 9 stages is you think your mind's getting worse. No, so all that's happened, but it says no, it's just that you're noticing it. It's sort of like, you know, you've always been unhealthy, but you go to the gym and you come back home with muscles you never knew you had. They've always been there. The problem's always been there, but now you're noticing it. So, but this is one of the biggest obstacles for most people who are practicing. Oh, I'm angry still after 30 years. My anger's getting worse. No, it's not, darling. It's a revelation for you that you've noticed your mind, because this is the point about these techniques. They enable us to go to a slightly subtler level if we're fortunate, and we begin to see our crazy mind. So the attitude has to be utter delight. And you said humility. This is fantastic, Kimberly. So that, you know, you're seeing what's there, and we've got a long way to go, baby. So be ready for it. And this is the real benefit, because the worst stuff, the worst ignorance is to not know what the problem is, but at least knowing what the problem is. It's sort of like, let's say you've been eating unhealthily all your life and you've just taken your ill health for granted. And then you start going on nutrition and going on diets. You suddenly notice your ill health 1,000 times worse because you're now aware, you become conscious. So it's brilliant, Kimberly. I totally rejoice.
Thank you. So I've still got it. Like I did.
It's going to be a long. Kimberly, don't hold your breath, baby. You have got a long way to go before we get to the level that Buddha says we can of ridding our mind with these delusions. They go to a primordially deep level, sweetheart. Don't see it as a monolithic thing. It's a gradual unpacking, unraveling process. So be delighted that you're doing the job.
Okay. I was really worried about dying with that in my mind stream. I was like, oh.
No. Let me tell you something else. This is another point that's crucial to understand. It's sort of, again, the analogy of a garden. Let's say you've never known botany. You look out at your garden every day and you see all this growing stuff. You don't know how to identify any of it. You just take it for granted. But suddenly you're learning botany. And you're shocked to see that all these weeds are out there. They've always been there, darling. But now you know botany, you're able to identify them. Now there's a big difference. One is if you know they're weeds and you consciously grow more. That's what being angry means. I'm angry and you buy into anger and this is good and you keep going. That's what creating anger means. And the same here, if you just look at the weeds and go, I don't care, let them grow. But now the other attitude is now you know they are weeds and you're going to watch it like a hawk and you know you can get rid of them. So that's not anger. That's seeing anger from a habit, but you don't buy into it and you want to change. That's very, very different. So be happy to see it. Watch these crazy roommates call all your angry thoughts like a hawk. Don't buy into their stories. Don't entertain them. kind of just learn to become friends with them. Don't panic, but you don't grow those weeds. You know they're there, and you've got methods to slowly weaken those weeds. That's the attitude. And so you have a brave attitude. Are you with me, darling?
Yeah, I'm just thinking they're my weeds. They're not someone else's fault, right?
That's right, sweetheart. Exactly. They're your ancient old habits. And it's marvelous that you're seeing them. And that's the benefit of these types of techniques when we can start to look into our mind. Of course, you know, and you know how to identify what you're seeing. This is great. So it's actually not comfortable, but it's good, and it's part of the process. Like, you don't come home from the gym having a panic attack because you have this pain. You know it's a sign of success. It's a crucial kind of an important analogy. But because we have so much attachment, attachment is this little junkie in us that only wants everything to be lovely. It can't cope with problems. Yeah, so we've got to have the courage to observe it's okay. And the better part of you, your virtue, your kindness, your intelligence, your goodness, your humility, that's the part that you're trying to nourish. And they're your good roommates. So nourish them and be wary of these rubbish, ridiculous roommates, but don't take them seriously, but don't buy into their stories, and learn to be, you know, notice, observe them, how they're functioning, and then you learn to work with your mind well. Be brave, sweetheart. Keep moving.
Thank you.
Good. Excellent. I rejoice.
Thank you.
Good, darling. What else, people?
I have a question.
Good. Which
Hello, Venerable. It's Alona.
Hello, Alona. Hello, sweetheart. Talk to me.
I want to ask about planting a seed.
About what, sweetheart?
About planting the seed.
Okay, good.
Of the, you know, my friends and even my husband, they know I'm a Buddhist. They see me practicing, but they don't ask.
Stop for a second. What do you mean they see you practicing? You should not practice in public. It should be very private. What do you mean they see you?
No, practicing? I mean, they know I'm going to the meditation retreats.
Okay, good. Fine.
They
good.
go that way, not the private.
Well,
my husband see private thing too.
Good.
But
Okay.
they don't ask anything. And
Okay.
I see, you know, like I see lots of suffering of like idea of having only one life.
I understand.
And I really want to, if I can, to place kind of sit in their consciousness.
I understand.
Maybe sometimes they will come to it.
I understand.
What can I do?
Okay, if you have a 5-year-old come to you, and you can see they've got, you know, a 5-year-old, and so in order for you to communicate properly with anybody, so let's say they're a 5-year-old, in order for you to communicate properly with that person, you need to know their mind, don't you? You need to know what they can hear. You need to know what they need to know. You need to know what they can understand. That's pretty reasonable, wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
So then it's exactly the same whether you're 55. You have to know the person's mind enough to be conscious. Are they interested? Can I have a discussion here? But the most of the time, it's easy to see if they're interested because they will ask you questions. And if they don't, then you mind your own business. I've been a Buddhist for 45 years. I've got 6 siblings. I adore my family. We love each other. We never talk about what we don't agree with. I can count on one hand questions they've asked me, the 6 of them in 45 years. I have no interest in pushing Buddhism down their throat. If they don't ask me, it's their business. So it's not my business to tell them anything I think. I just who I am. They see me. They can have whatever views they like. I have discussions with, say, some of my sisters. I don't use Buddhist words, and we can talk because lots of it is Buddhist. Natural. Much of Buddhism is just natural psychology. People understand it. But if there's no interest on the other person's side, mind your own business, Alona. Do you understand?
Yes, it's hard
Relax.
to watch.
No, that's your problem.
Okay.
That's right. No, that's right. Precisely, darling. Exactly right. Because your attachment, it's sort of like you've never, like I said before to Kimberly, you've never known nutrition before, and you've been unhealthy, and everybody's unhealthy. Everybody eats bad, and suddenly you learn nutrition. Well, you want to run now. Suddenly you see everybody how they're all sick naturally. So, but that's what fundamentalism is. You try to then convert everybody. No, you be very cautious.
That's why I don't want to do it.
Precisely. Yeah. Even with one of my sisters one time, and there was a party, and she was slightly drunk, a little bit. So she asked me some questions, but I knew she wasn't interested. So I cracked a joke and changed the subject. You've got to be very relaxed, Alona. Even if somebody does ask you one question, they're just being polite. Then don't blurt out 4 hours of Buddhism. Relax. have no wish to push it down someone else's throat. That's just your own. It's nice to have that. That's compassion. But also it's your attachment that suddenly, because you've got an answer, you think everybody has to know the answer. No, wrong, wrong, wrong. Relax. Relax, Alona. Mind your own business. Do your practice and be an example. That's enough.
Yeah. I don't get involved. But, you know, I was like, is it any way I can shock them for a second? So maybe in 5 lifetimes, they will get to it, you know?
That's right. Well, just by being an example is perfect, sweetheart.
Okay. Thank you.
Good, Alona. Thanks. What else, people?
Hello, Robina. Here's Sarah. Thank you
Hello,
for
Sarah.
the teaching. Hi.
Hello, yes.
Yeah, I'm really new to purification practice.
Okay. Yeah.
I wanted to ask if I'm purificating an act I done, for example, killing.
Your voice is a bit kind of, your voice is a bit sort of rough. I can't quite hear it properly.
Yes. Can you hear me now? Is it
Better,
okay?
yeah.
Yes. Okay. I wanted to ask if for example, I'm purificating an action like killing a mosquito or something.
Yes. Yes.
How do I know that it was successfully beside of dreams? I know in dreams you can see, but beside of this.
Exactly. I haven't even begun to be the discussion of actually purifying karma yet. The general talk today is just setting the ground for how we create karma. And purifying is another way of creating karma. So we're just getting these fundamentals clear first. And then from next week's class, we'll start to go into those details. Okay? Good. Thanks, Sarah. Okay. So, yeah, okay. So, okay. So in general, the Buddha's view is our consciousness goes back and goes forward, forward. Whatever we're experiencing moment by moment, whatever's in our garden at this moment is what we put in it. This is the fundamental one of karma. This is the one that takes the longest time, because the instinct of ego is to think it's been put there. How dare you do that to me? Oh, I'm so fortunate. I deserve happiness. We have these very deep views of attachment and aversion that are these philosophical views that we assume. Attachment assumes I deserve only the good things, and anger assumes I don't deserve the bad. This is very primordial. We're going to go into this. This is the way we think now. So we naturally think we're an innocent victim who didn't ask to get born. Someone else plonked us on this planet, either God or mummy, and somehow this innocent victim is a very strong feeling we have, and bad things happen to us and it's not fair, and good things happen to us and we deserve good things and keep doing good things. People, we never ask why they happen. So this is very deep in us, and this is all contradicted when we start to think about the view of karma, this logical Buddha, for the Buddha, a logical law of cause and effect. So then again, this law runs us. Whatever we think and do and say has come from the past, and whatever we do now produces our future. So we need to learn. It's like learning botany. You know, you learn botany, now you can start to navigate and start to be in charge of this garden. That's the point. His Holiness calls it self-creation. It's so powerful. So given that, so then the thing is, we've all had countless lives, Buddha says, and we've all done countless negative actions. We've all naturally, so there's trillions of imprints, trillions of seeds in our mind, latent, waiting for the appropriate conditions where they can ripen as our future suffering. And given that I don't want suffering, then first, I stop killing, stealing, lying. I stop causing suffering. And second, I need to purify. This is what an action we do. This is a practice we do at the end of the day. Best to do at the end of the day. So the general principle is that there's no karma that can't be purified. One of the biggest sufferings in our lives is when we've done bad things. I mean, my friends in prison, for example, who've killed, let's say, done heavy duty things, and you feel so hopeless. You feel like nothing I can do. The person's dead. How can I be forgiven? So people are devastated. So for me, the people I know in prison who would really like Buddhism, this one of karma and purification is a revelation for them. They love it, you know. But you're not hopeless. You're not set in stone. It's not too late. You're not, you know, you're not lost. There's no karma we can't change. There's no seed we can't pull out. There's no seed we can't weaken. So the purification practice is this conscious, I'll just mention it in this few minutes we've got left, the starting of it, the process, and we'll go into more detail as we go along. So the purification practice is, you know, there's a nice way of remembering it, the 4 R's. So all these words I'm saying here are in your course notes, you know. So the first one, there's the 4 R's. There's a different order, but the order that in the book that I like to use is also from Rinpoche, He uses it sometimes slightly differently, calls them something slightly differently. It's very logical, psychologically. So using the analogy of, say, having eaten poison, using the analogy of, say, you've got the tendency to get diabetes and you've eaten the sugar. So the first step, isn't it? I'll just go through these 4 briefly. The first step in this process is to acknowledge to yourself that you did in fact eat that sugar. Now in our lives, we have 3 responses to this type of thing based upon the guilt, blame, punishment, reward model. We know it's naughty to eat sugar. Let's use the analogy of sugar. We know it's naughty to do the naughty thing. So we know it's naughty and we're worried about, so the first one is when we've noticed we did something naughty, ate the sugar, that's the analogy. The first response would be to blame somebody. Who put sugar in my food? It's not my fault. That's blame. The other one we have is, oh, I'm such a bad person, I ate sugar. That's guilt. And they're both total paralysis. The anger one is so obvious, especially anger. We spend our lives trying to blame Marlboro, blame the sugar companies, and it's true, they make naughty things, but we eat them. We smoke the cigarettes. Blaming everybody else. I'm this innocent victim who didn't ask to get born and it's not my fault. That's the deepest instinct of ego. You've got to realize this. Again, as I said, don't blame your Jewish mummy or your Catholic mummy. It's the deepest impulse of ego to be an innocent victim. Or the other extreme, I'm a bad person. I'm completely a bad person. And that's the exaggeration of guilt. And guilt is exactly the same as anger, except you are the object, that's all. So it's anger, you did this and you did this and you did this and you're a bad person. Guilt is I did this and I did that and I did this and I'm a bad person. So guilt and anger are identical. Different object, that's all. We run to these. The third one is ridiculous, is denial. So the first one is, who put sugar in my dinner? The second one is, oh my God, I'm so bad I ate sugar. The third one is, no, I didn't eat sugar. They're all ridiculous. They all don't solve a problem. They're all distorted, exaggerated, neurotic, I-based, and don't help. And these are our instinct. So this process does take time. I'm talking really seriously. Psychologically, it's quite a nuanced, subtle process. You've got to engage in it as seriously as you can and as understandingly as you can, because it's instinctively we do the opposite, So what's the appropriate view? Always quote His Holiness. One person asked, what is the difference between this attitude called regret and the attitude called guilt? And His Holiness said, it's very simple. With guilt, you look in the past, I did this and I did that and I did this and I'm a bad person. That's guilt, useless. What's regret? The first part is exactly the same. You acknowledge, I did eat the sugar. I did do that. I did kill. I did steal. I did lie. But then you say, what can I do about it? That's the door that we open, That's the optimism, because there's nothing we can't change. As long as you keep saying, who put sugar in my food? As long as you keep saying, oh, I'm hopeless, I'm no good, I'm a bad person. As long as you deny you've eaten sugar, there's no solution. It's just very simple. There's no solution. You just drown in misery. But with the view, I did eat sugar. And then regret is the attitude, not of I shouldn't have eaten sugar. That's common. That's completely just anger again. Or I'm bad, so not I'm a bad person, but I did eat sugar, but out of my own foolishness. That's just an old habit. I know it is. I'm ignorant. I didn't realize I was doing it. I did eat sugar, but what can I do to fix it? That's the saving piece. That's the amazing part about regret, I mean, we could talk the whole next 3 weeks on regret. People have been Buddhists for 30 years, still don't do it properly, don't understand it properly. We hear it as I shouldn't have done it. We hear it as guilt. We hear it as punitive. We hear it as I am bad. We've got to unpack it. We've got to be clear conceptually about exactly the right attitude. So regret is the recognition, what a fool I was. I didn't realize. I'm so used to eating these stupid cakes. I just didn't realize I did this again. What a fool I am. It's kindness to yourself. Regret is kindness to yourself. I did do that action. I did kill the dog. I did cheat on my boyfriend. I did have the abortion. I did do this, you know. It's owning it. Then what can I do to fix it? Because there's nothing set in stone. I think we should finish that. So regret is not guilt. It is not anger. It is not blame. It is not set in stone. It is not, I shouldn't have done it. That's anger. When your mother says you shouldn't have done that, what good is it? It's anger. There's no solution. Same with guilt. There's no solution. Just stuck. You just get worse. But I did do it. Now what can I do to fix it? Because when you've identified the problem, you've already identified the solution. It's very optimistic. How can I apply the antidote? We'll go to that's the next step. We'll go to that. So I think we finished there. Food for thought, okay, sweethearts? For 1 week, for another one, for next week, think about it, read your course notes, because everything I'm talking about is going to be in those course notes. And the other thing to realize, just to finish with this, to think about, is this purification practice is like putting atomic bombs under the seeds you've already planted so they don't ripen. So basically purification practice, these 4 opponent powers, as they're called, the 4 opponent powers, they prevent the seeds from ripening, but they're not the final purification. It's only when we finally realized emptiness that we cut the root of all delusions. You know? But this is a necessary, it's like putting atomic bombs to get the stuff out of the way. But finally, when we realize emptiness, that's the real purification. And we'll talk about that.
Venerable, would there be time for one additional question? We have one in the chat box, but we can also read it for the next.
Sure.
All right, so I will read it out. Good evening, Venerable Robina. Having an instinctive feeling of aversion toward a person, not able to let it go despite of their approach and interaction to me in a nice or mean way. Is it just creation of my mind, or is it possible there is a karmic dimension to its root?
There's nothing that isn't the result of karma. There's nothing. It can't be. There's nothing in your garden that didn't come from a previous seed. It's obvious. So the character of what's in your garden, as a weed or a flower, is dependent upon the seeds you planted. So the way we see other people, regardless of what they're like to us, some people we just can't stand the sight of them. They did nothing wrong, really. Some people, we adore them. So this is much to do with our past relationship, and as much to do with an action of theirs in the past. So once you know that, then you observe your mind having aversion for them. You just have to watch your mind like a hawk and try to realize your aversion is anger. It's an exaggerated, distorted assessment of their bad qualities. So you watch it like a hawk. You be careful with your speech. You don't act out that aversion. And of course there's karma there. There's no question there's karma there. There's no doubt. It's like if you meet a rat, why do you think everybody's so afraid of rats? There's nothing inherently ugly about a rat. A rat is like a dog. It's got a tail, it's got teeth, it's got eyes. But look at the karma a rat must have to be hated by so many people. This is the karma of the person. So watch that, recognize that, watch your mind, try not to act it out, and then look into the aversion and know that aversion is an exaggeration of their ugly qualities. So just be very cautious. It's hard work, isn't it? That's practice. All right, everybody. Jang Chub Sem Chogram Poche, Ma Ke Panam Ke Gyuchi Ke Panyampa, Me Payang Gong Ne Gong Du, Pava Sho Gewadi, Nudo Dag Lama Sange Drugyo Ne, Drowa Chikyang Malupa De Sala Gapa Sho. Thank you, precious ones. Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everybody. Much love, everybody. See you next week, and think about, read the notes, contemplate, do the practice, even just follow what's in the book, do it a bit, and we can then do it together one of the days. Thank you so much, precious ones. Bye.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you, Venerable.